Hello everybody, and thank you for stopping by. I want to do a little bit of what I call chicken talk. Okay? Um I I know there's a lot of people that have chickens, but there's a lot of people who don't. And I know that some people have chickens that sit on their eggs and hatch out. And you might run into a problem where you can't get started for your baby chickens. Oh, but I want to show you something before I start telling you that. Let me see if I can get up from here. I'm kind of in an awkward position here. I wanted you to see this. This is an old popcorn tin, okay? And this is an old pizza pan. And I don't know if you can see the brackets at the bottom. It's an L type bracket, small metal ones. And what my Nutter Butter did is he screwed one part of the L into the popcorn pan or tin, and then the other screw to the pizza pan. And he put a washer on the back, okay? And then he took some wire, probably can't see that good, to hang them so they're not on the ground, okay? It saves from buying the feeders, you know, the expensive ones that hang. Somebody that I know buys popcorn every year at Christmas time, or they get a tin of it, and they give me their tins. They're empty popcorn tins, and we make feeders out of it. That's an inexpensive feeder. It's free. And that's an old pizza pan that's no good anymore. Okay, I just wanted you to see the inexpensive way that we made some of our feeders. We have 4 of those because we do have more inside. We have a really, really huge area for chickens. They have a backyard. My front yard is well over just my front yard, a half acre. And my back is, you know, I have total of like 5 acres of property. So a lot of it I don't even use. But I let the goats graze on it. But this is a chicken video, okay? If things get really, really difficult, I know for my aunt, things were very difficult. She was a single mother. Her husband had passed away, and she had 4 daughters. And she had chickens, but she many times couldn't afford feed, and especially could not afford starter. And I remember watching her as a little girl. She had a box that she kept in the kitchen because she had a wood stove that she cooked on. Most of my family back then, when I was a little girl, did. They all still lived the way they did during the Depression. And I got a big treat being able to see many of my family members when I was growing up living. She even had an outhouse. They still used it. And that was a treat for me as a young girl growing up to see all of that. But she had a box. That rooster is trying to jump. Watch this. Watch him. Isn't that funny? There's a bush growing in there, and he was jumping up to get the leaves off of it. But I'm sorry, I get tickled at them and I lose my concentration. But she had an outhouse, and that was my first experience at an outhouse, okay? Never seen one before, but she had a box that she would keep in the kitchen because, you know, she would have the baby chicks in them, and she'd keep it close to the stove because that's where she cooked, and it helped keep the baby chicks warm. And she would hard-boiled eggs, and I would ask her, what are you doing, you know, because I'm a kid, curious, and she said, I'm making food for the baby chicks. And I'm like, hard-boiled eggs? And she goes, oh yeah. And she would take the shell off of them and smash them up, and she would put them in a little container and set it inside the box, and these baby chicks would eat that. And I was just shocked, you know, that that's what she did. It kind of surprised me, and I was like, oh wow, you know, she was feeding the baby chicks hard-boiled eggs. Now, some people may be grossed out by that, but I have a chicken book, and I was shocked. You know, when you grow up and you see things, sometimes you forget things, and I do have a chicken book that's very helpful. And one year we had some chickens that hatched out some babies. This was different chickens than these. I had a different set before. And I didn't have any starter. And I live 80 miles from anything. I mean, from anything. I'm 80 miles away from the closest feed store, whatever you want to call it. Feed store, I should say. And I didn't want to run in and get starter. Just, you know, because I'm cheap. Try to watch my pennies. And I try not to make unnecessary trips. And I remembered my aunt and what she did and how she hard-boiled eggs and she fed them to the baby chicks, and that's what I did. And it worked out perfectly fine. So, you know, you don't know in the future what the future may hold. If you have chickens, you may not know that you can actually feed them hard-boiled eggs. My aunt also, when she cut up meat, I watched her, she'd get like the little tough parts in the meat, you know, where it may have a vein or something running through it, and she would throw that down to those baby chickens and they would gobble it up. They'd fight over it. And that's how she raised those baby chicks, off of hard-boiled eggs. She did not buy starters. She couldn't afford it. And that's how she raised them. And I know that some people might not like that idea, but you never know when you may get into a position where you may have to do something like that. Sometimes we don't know what the future may hold. You may not have chickens now, but you may get them later, and you may be put in a position where you cannot get starter or you can't afford the starter, and you're like, well, what am I going to feed the baby chicks? Well, you can boil hard-boiled eggs and feed it to them. And until they get old enough or until you can get your hands on some starter. Now, she never fed them starter at all. She fed them bits and pieces of meat that, well, you know, she couldn't chew herself because she knew that her kids couldn't chew. And she fed it raw to the chickens. And so, and like I said, the hard-boiled eggs. But you don't know. I'm trying to give people information, is what I'm trying to do, because you may not use it today, but you might use it tomorrow, or you might use it a year from now. You might run into a situation, things get really bad. You think you may not have chickens, and that's not what you're going to do. But you may decide you have no other choice, and you're going to try to get chickens. Or you may run into somebody that would be kind, because I know that if I ran into a family that was really struggling and wanted to raise the chickens, I would give them a couple. If I knew that they were serious. I've given people rabbits before. I've given people chickens before. And I'm going to be quite honest, they just got rid of them. They did. The rabbits, they got rid of them. They didn't want to take care of them. It was 2 rabbits, a female and a male, and they thought that was too much to handle. And they didn't bother calling me and telling me, hey, I don't want these rabbits anymore. Do you want them back? No, they gave them away. They didn't want me to know, but, you know, somebody else told me, because I kept asking them about the rabbits, and they kept putting me off, and I kept thinking, well, they should have bred them by now, and somebody told me, no, they got rid of them. And when I confronted them, well, it was, you know, it was too much work. Okay, you know, you asked for rabbits because you were concerned in the future something might happen, and if you think one rabbit and, you know, if male and female is too much, you know, I was like, what do you think you're going to do in the future? But anyhow, if, like I said, if I ran into a family that I knew was hurting and needed help and wanted chickens, I would give them a couple. I would. And so if they had baby chicks and they didn't know what to do, you may run into the same situation. You may not have chickens now, like I said, but in the future something may happen and you may make a serious decision and say, no, I need these. I may not necessarily want to do this, but this is what I'm going to do because I need to. And I'm just letting you know that if you do have a hen that does sit and you cannot afford starter, you can hard-boiled eggs and give them the starter. And at least maybe it'll help you until maybe you can afford the starter. If you know, you're insistent you want to give it to them. But your chickens will not die. They will be perfectly fine off of smashed up hard-boiled eggs. White, yellow, all smashed up together, and they will do just fine. My aunt raised all her chickens, baby chicks, that way, and she never had any problems. And like I said, you can also make feeders from popcorn, tin cans, just some L brackets, and any kind of pan underneath. It doesn't have to be an old pizza pan. It could be an overly large cake pan. Maybe you can get a cheap pan from the Dollar Tree for $1 and put your brackets on it. And then you've got yourself a self-hanging feeder. And for free, if you've got the popcorn tins, if you know somebody has a popcorn tins, and he just made a hole in the top part and put some heavy wire through it and bent it to make a handle. And then from that, he tied it with some string from a 2x4 at the top. And it just hangs there. So I hope you found this information helpful, and I hope you enjoyed the chickens. I do. And may God bless you, and may you have a blessed day.